Okay, so we are back with another Ultimate Marvel team up video. And today we're going to do the one where Spider-Man teams up with the Punisher, but also teams up with Daredevil. Now, I will admit, this is most likely my favorite Ultimate Marvel team up book. And on top of that, my favorite Ultimate Punisher book as well. I mean, he was good in the Ultimate Avengers books, but I feel like this one right here was really good because it was our first introduction to the character of Punisher in the Ultimate Marvel universe. And so getting into today's storyline, we do pick up with Frank Castle currently in prison. Now, the reason why he is in prison is going to be told to us here in a moment, but we do see Frank Castle currently listening in a conversation going on between two other inmates in prison. Now, these two inmates are talking about the idea of getting out of prison because the Shocker just got out of prison. And this should tell you right off the bat, this takes place after the second story arc in Ultimate Spider-Man. Now, when it came to Shocker, the reason why he was able to get out of prison is because his lawyer said, hey, Spider-Man is a vigilante, which means that he has no rights to stop my client. But on top of that, he has no rights to help police officers stop my client either, which means that Spider-Man went against my client's rights. Just like that, the Shocker got out very easily. But these two inmates are talking about the idea of calling up their lawyers and doing the same thing Shocker did with his lawyer to say that, hey, they were stopped by a vigilante. Now, they were not stopped by Spider-Man. They were stopped by Daredevil. But the thing is, he's still a vigilante, which means that he did go against their rights. But the thing is, though, one of these guys is actually an abuser. One of the worst kind of abuse. Really, all abuse is bad. Either way, though, he is an abuser. But he is talking about the idea of calling up his lawyer to have his lawyer get him out of prison so that he will be able to continue his abuse on somebody else. Now, as soon as Frank Castle hears this, he's all like, no, that is not okay at all. And so you have Frank Castle grab a spoon and use the spoon as a way to cut the guy's throat. Now, just like that, he is grabbed by a bunch of guards. And this is where we kind of find out that Frank Castle was thrown in prison because he killed a cop. And that right there is very important for the overall storyline. But we also kind of find out Frank Castle was a cop. So he was a cop that killed another cop. But the question is, though, why? Now, after that, you do have Frank Castle have a meeting with his doctor, Dr. Rubin. Now, when it comes to Dr. Rubin, really, we're not going to learn much about her character at all. Instead, she's only here trying to understand the mind of Frank Castle, but to kind of help us dive into his origin story here in the Ultimate Marvel universe. Now, like I said earlier, the reason why he is in prison because he killed a cop, and he was a cop. But the question is right now, why did he kill that other cop for? Now, when it comes to Dr. Rubin, she does tell us that right after his family was killed off, that was when the Punisher came to life. Frank Castle began to go after other bad people across the world as the Punisher. Now, at first, no one knew that Frank Castle was the Punisher until he was arrested. But after that, the world found out, okay, Frank Castle is the Punisher, but they only found out after he had killed that cop. Now, the thing is, though, she says, you know what? I told the justice system it was a bad idea to put you in prison. Now, it's not her saying like, oh, because he's innocent. It's more the idea like, he is the Punisher. His whole idea is to go after bad people and to kill them off. You took this character and then put him inside a prison that is full of bad people. What in the world were you actually thinking? And she's right, because honestly, this is a bad move to do. But the thing is, she wants to know, why did he kill that cop for? Because if she finds out, then maybe she can kind of help him in other areas when it comes to being locked up. But when it comes to Frank Castle, he does not want to talk at all. Now, real quick, when it comes to Brian Michael Bendis, when he is writing Ultimate Punisher, the dude makes sure the Punisher barely has any lines at all. Literally any lines. Most of the time, he probably says 10 words and that is it. Now, when other writers use Frank Castle in the Ultimate Marvel Universe and their stories, they give the Punisher extra lines to kind of show off the idea that the Punisher can speak. He can say a whole lot more lines than just 5 words and that is it. Either way, when it comes to Dr. Rubin, she wants Frank to talk to her. But again, this is written by Brian Michael Bendis, and so the Punisher does not talk to her at all. And so unfortunately, she cannot help him, and now she has to leave. But we finally pick up with Spider-Man. Now, when it comes to Spider-Man, like I said earlier, the dude barely appears in this story arc at all. Literally, he mostly appears in the final chapter of this 3-part story arc. And so when he appears right here, it's only for 2 pages. And the reason why, because while you have Peter Parker being Spider-Man and just, swinging around town, minding his business, he sees a crowd of people cheering for him. And then all the cheers goes away. And now they are scared. And the reason why, because there is a billboard right behind Spider-Man that says, "The Punisher has just broke out of prison." The guy who's a well-known serial killer has just got out of prison and now on the loose. And so now a lot of people in New York are very scared of the idea of the Punisher being out there once again. But as we jump into the second chapter, we do pick up with a random cop who's very upset about the idea of the Punisher being out of prison. Now, here's the thing. He's also upset about the idea that there are other people who like the idea of Frank Castle being the Punisher, going around killing off bad people who he thinks deserves to die. And the thing is, if the Punisher finds you, you're a bad person, you are for sure going to die. And you'll see what I mean here in a moment. But this cop is very upset with Frank Castle being out and other people who are technically fans of Frank Castle. Now, when this cop goes out to his car, he's confronted by Frank Castle, and Frank wants to kill him off. He's all like, "Hey man, it's time for you to die." Now this cop, he knows Frank very well, and he is begging, he is literally begging Frank, "Please don't kill me. And if you do, please do not shoot off my face. Please just, kill me, but shoot me in my gut instead." And to Frank, he's all like, "Dude, I don't care at all," and literally blows a man's head off and goes on with his day. Just like that, that cop is now dead. But then we pick up with a character known as Bruce Greenwood. Now, when it comes to Bruce, he is currently meeting up with his lawyer, and his lawyer would be Matt Murdock. Now, when it comes to Matt in the Ultimate Marvel Universe, this was his first appearance. Now, when it comes to his origin, it's not really told to us. And the reason why, because it's very similar to his main Marvel Universe counterpart. And so technically, it kind of gets told to us very quick and fast so that we are able to move on to Bruce. And the reason why, because we're going to use Bruce as a way to tell the origin of Ultimate Punisher. And when it comes to Bruce Greenwood, we kind of find out that he used to be the partner to Frank Castle when Frank was a police officer. Now, here's the thing, because when it comes to Bruce, he tells us right off the bat that the entire precinct that him and Frank worked at was filled with dirty cops left and right. And the reason why, because they were getting paid under the table by another person who was trying to become the kingpin of crime in New York. And of course, that character would be the Owl. Now, when it comes to the Owl in the Ultimate Marvel Universe, I want to say this is the only time he's ever referenced at all. But on top of that, it seems like he's very similar to his main Marvel Universe counterpart, that he is trying to become the kingpin of crime in New York by paying off a bunch of police officers left and right. Now, when it came to the precinct that Frank and Mr. Bruce here have both worked at, They had a sergeant known as Arthur Juliet. Now, when it comes to Arthur Juliet, he was like the biggest dirty cop in the entire precinct, but he was also the right-hand man for the Owl. Really, he was more of the middleman for the Owl. And what I mean by that is, if you were a dirty cop in that precinct, but you wanted some money from the Owl, you had to go through Arthur. Now, here's the thing, because every other cop in that precinct was basically dirty, including Bruce. Now, for Bruce, the only reason why he did what he did is because he needed some money to support his family. Either way, every single cop in that precinct was basically a crooked cop, except Frank Castle. And matter of fact, it bothered Arthur so much that he wanted to get rid of Frank Castle. He was trying to find so many different ways to get rid of Frank, but unfortunately, he had no good ideas at all. Now, things got even harder on Juliet when Internal Affairs came in, because word got out that this precinct was filled with dirty cops left and right. Now, of course, when they came by, they couldn't find any hard evidence that proved that this entire precinct was filled with dirty cops until Frank Castle. See, Frank Castle had enough with the idea these cops were not being good cops, and so he gave Internal Affairs enough evidence to bring down almost every single member of the precinct who was technically a dirty cop. This man was going hardcore to make sure justice is restored in this precinct. And the thing is, Arthur and other cops did not like the idea at all. And so they came up with a crazy game plan, which was to kill off Frank Castle. They're going to bring in a bunch of guys to make it look like a gang war had technically popped out in the middle of the park, and the only person who got shot would have been Frank Castle. We already know that did not go as planned, because instead his entire family got killed off and not Frank Castle. And so that is why Frank is going after different cops who are part of that precinct, because Frank learned that basically the people who killed off his family were the same ones from his precinct. Now, once Matt hears his story, you have Matt Murdock tell Bruce, you gotta confess this to someone else. Like, you gotta turn yourself in, my dude, because technically what you are telling me that you were involved in the death of 3 other people, but on top of that, you're the reason why we have the Punisher in the world. So yeah, you have to go out and literally turn yourself in, and hopefully you'll have some protection from the Punisher. Now, as soon as Matt says that, the Punisher was across the street and literally just kills off Bruce through the windows just like that. Just shooting into Matt's office all over the place and killing off Bruce. And once that happened, you have Matt quickly leave the office and go and change into his Daredevil outfit. Now, when it comes to Matt Murdock, it really kind of shows that the ultimate version of Matt Murdock is not as great as his main Marvel Universe counterpart. And what I mean by that is, he is quickly caught off guard by the Punisher, because as soon as he gets outside, the Punisher was able to sneak up on him and put a gun to his head, just like that. And for me personally, I'm kind of like, even though the Punisher is a well-trained killer, you're going to tell me that he was still able to sneak up perfectly behind Matt Murdock, Daredevil, who has enhanced senses, and his hearing had also improved as well. But apparently, he did not hear the Punisher sneak up from behind. And so as we jump into the third and final chapter, we do pick up with Matt Murdock and Frank Castle having a conversation with one another. Now, when it comes to their conversation, it's really more of Matt Murdock and Frank kind of debating over their different opinions about the justice system. Now, this is also Matt trying his best to talk down Frank from the idea of killing off Matt, because what you have Matt saying to Frank is that it's not a good idea to kill him off. but it's also not a good idea to kill off the people who had killed his family so many years ago. Because Matt's saying you have to trust in the actual justice system. If you were able to come forward with the proof that your family was killed off by a bunch of crooked cops, then just maybe the justice system may do you right and get rid of those men who did you harm. But it's Frank saying, why in the world would I trust in the same system that got my family killed, got me thrown in jail? Like, why in the world would I do that? Because in that same system, you have a bunch of cops who are technically crooked and working for bad men in the city. For example, his last boss, when it came to Arthur Juliet, he works for the Owl, who is trying to become the next kingpin of crime in New York. Now, you have the Punisher shoot at Daredevil, and you have Matt tell us that he's not really great at dodging bullets, which means that Frank was not going to kill off Matt at all. And so you have Frank leave, and Matt's wondering, where is Frank going to go next? Now, Matt has to change back into his regular clothes and get back into his office before the police arrive. And when they do arrive, he pretends to be somebody that was so scared because he heard a bunch of gunshots happening in his office. But in reality, he knows what exactly went down. Now, you have the cops examine the body, and of course, it's Bruce from earlier. But that is the moment where you have Arthur Juliet walk in. Now, when he walks in, he claims that he was in the neighborhood when he heard the call, but honestly he knew that, hey, the Punisher must have gone after somebody else in his circle, and unfortunately it was Bruce. And we come to find out Arthur Juliet is the last cop left in that group that had killed off Frank Castle's family, and so he is very concerned about the idea that Frank might come after him next, which honestly Frank is going to do that very soon. And matter of fact, it does not take that long for Frank to come after Juliet, because when it comes to Juliet or Arthur, when he goes back home to his kids, this is him making sure that at least he has one more last moment with his children before he, well, gets killed off by Frank. Except that is the moment Frank enters his apartment and tells Arthur, hey, go upstairs to the roof so I will not kill you off in front of your family. Now, when it comes to Frank, he's actually more down with the idea of killing off Juliet in front of his kids, but it's Frank saying, you know what, I'll give you this last wish, but you're still going to die. Now, before Frank is able to pull the trigger, he is stopped by Matt Murdock, Daredevil, who is once again trying to reason with Frank about the idea of letting the justice system work to bring these men down, to have them basically stand up for the crimes that they have committed. Now, here's the thing though, because out of nowhere, you have Spider-Man appear. Now, by this point in the story, Spider-Man has no idea what in the world is going on. The only thing he saw was Frank Castle with a gun pointed at a guy that he was trying to kill. There's also Daredevil, but for Spider-Man, the guy with the gun has to go first. And so that is why he attacked the Punisher. And so you have Matt get very upset with Spider-Man because now Arthur Juliet is trying to get away. Oh, by the way, Matt Murdock got shot because when Spider-Man kicked Frank in the face, he did pull the trigger and that bullet hit Matt Murdock in the shoulder. Either way, you have Matt say, I'll stay here and take care of this guy, the Punisher, while you go after the guy that's getting away. Of course, that would be Arthur. And so by the next page, we see both characters are going to jail for their crimes. Now, once you have Frank Castle go back over to the prison, well, he is confronted by Dr. Bruce. Now, when it comes to Dr. Bruce, she does tell Frank that when it came to the warden and other people involved in his actual trial this time, they wanted to lock up Frank in solitary forever because this man is a cold-blood killer. Except a great lawyer, of course, Matt Murdock, was able to work out a better deal where he will not be locked up in solitary at all. And also, he will be able to go to a regular cell and have a cellmate as well. Now, here's the thing. Because we kind of find out his cellmate is actually his old sergeant, Arthur Juliet, the guy that he was trying to kill off earlier until he was stopped by Spider-Man. Matt Murdock was able to work out some kind of deal that will let Frank and Arthur become cellmates, which means that Frank is about to enjoy this next kill very, very soon. But this is where we are going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later.